Welcome to Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer, a podcast where testicular cancer survivors, caregivers, and others who have navigated the cancer journey share their stories. The podcast comes to you from the Max Mallory Foundation, a nonprofit family foundation focused on educating about testicular cancer in honor and in memory of Max Mallory, who died in 2016 at the young age of 22 from testicular cancer. Had he survived, Max wanted to help young adults with cancer. This podcast helps meet that goal. Here now is your host, Joyce Lofstrom, Max's mom and a young adult cancer survivor.
So with me today is Matthew Tyler, and he just celebrated his 10 years of being cancer-free after his diagnosis of testicular cancer at age 22. He's here to share his story about testicular cancer, his treatment, and life during the last 10 years. I can tell you he has one child and another on the way, which is just the preview of our conversation. So Matthew, I'm so glad you could be with us today.
Thanks, Joyce. It means a lot. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So let's start. Tell us your story about testicular cancer. Anything you want to share about your diagnosis, treatment?
Yeah. So I was a young man at the time. I guess I still kind of feel young and where I'm at in life, but was definitely really young and just at the point in life where you start out on your own and you feel like you've got the world at your fingertips and you got big goals and aspirations and where you want your life to go. And I was not married at the time. I was actually dating who is my wife now. We were dating at that point in time. And so it was a big shocker for me to receive that news. And the way that I'd received it was basically had some discomfort and just knew something was going on, something wasn't right. And so I'd actually told Addie, who's my wife, I told her like, hey, this is kind of strange. I don't know. What are your thoughts? She encouraged me to go to the doctor. And so I went to get a physical exam, and you would think that you'd have to have a scan or blood work and any of that stuff done to be, diagnosed with cancer. But the doctor, even like in the middle of the physical exam, was like, I'm 95% sure you got testicular cancer. So it was the last thing that I thought that I'd be getting told when I was going just for a simple checkup for something that seemed very minor and not like a big deal. I'm somebody who played sports my whole life. I was a collegiate athlete for a few years and went through Tommy John surgery. And so I've had a number of things like that come up, and you get hurt and like kind of last thing you expect. You're healthy and in good shape. I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't do anything in excess that was unhealthy, and felt like I was pretty well-rounded from a health standpoint. And so it was a big shocker for me. It was really hard. It was a shock because right after that I was told that I was going to have surgery to remove one of my testicles. And so at a young age, when you're not married, you don't have kids, you hadn't done any of that in life, you're like, what? That's the last thing I want to be getting told right now. It's kind of like one of those jokes where it's like my arm kind of deal. I can live without that, right? So I was definitely at a point in my life where I felt like it was probably one of the lowest points, just from a mental standpoint and stress, and didn't know what God had in plan for me. I felt like I'd drawn the short straw in life at that point. And so I went ahead and had surgery and was hopeful that was going to really be the end of it. I had just finished my undergraduate, so I had graduated my 4-year degree and was actually renting a house on my own and just officially moved out. When I was in college, I was working and I lived at home some. The first 2 years of college, I went off to school and played baseball. And so lived in a dorm and did that. But then I'd really, quote unquote, officially moved out and was not coming home during breaks or summer. So that was, for me, that was like, oh, we'll go have surgery. I'll be done. I'll go back to work. I was working part-time actually for Chick-fil-A. I actually got an opportunity to work on a warehousing team out of college. And so was doing that actually in my last 2 years of college, and then continued to do that right out of college when I graduated. So then I went through that surgery. And so the doctor at the time, my oncologist, Dr. Taha, was like, hey, we're going to go back and do some blood work in 3 to 4 weeks once you're done with surgery. And I want to see where your tumor markers are at. If they are elevated still, since you're young, we want to go ahead and knock this thing out and do chemotherapy. And if they're not, then you'll be good. We'll just monitor it. So I had been diagnosed with stage 1 testicular cancer. So luckily I'd caught it very early.
Yeah.
Fortunate enough that I didn't wait. And we can kind of get into that, but I met some people through my journey that did wait. And so it was a lot more of an intensive surgery and treatment than what I went through. And so long story short, got back into the doctor's office, had blood work done, and was told that my markers were elevated and that we were going to start chemotherapy in the coming weeks, and that I was going to do a 3-round stint. It was going to be 3 weeks per round, and the first week of each of those rounds were going to be like 5 days, 8 hours a day in a chair, having really the first hour was going to be of the treatment, and then like the next 7 hours was just fluids so that they could flush that through my system and my kidneys and stuff like that. They felt like the chemo the treatment that I was getting, and that was one thing that was new for me. I thought chemo was chemo, but I didn't realize that you do different types of chemo and there's regimens and for different types of cancer. But the chemo, from what I understood, was like one of the most intensive chemo treatments that they do, period, because of just what type of cancer I had, and I guess how young I was, and what they felt like how aggressive they could be with it. So that long stint of fluids was to try to prevent any other type of cancer occurring from getting that chemo treatment. You're basically using a poison to kill another poison or a disease in your body. So it wasn't fun. It was a lot. It was very depressing and hard. I will say though that, the people that came around me during that time were critical in me getting through that successfully from a mental health standpoint. And then obviously from a faith standpoint, God, and having faith that he had a plan for me and this wasn't going to be the end, or this wasn't going to be a detriment to my future and the trajectory of my life. That was just part of the story was, another big part of that. And so I'm thankful for that. Obviously thankful for the treatment that I got at the City of Hope, or at the time it was this Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Fortunate enough they had built one close to home for me. That was another huge blessing in itself. But ultimately, went through the treatment, went through those 3 rounds, and then thankfully got done, and I went back in for blood work and was told that the markers were now at a safe level and that we were good to go into remission. Obviously lost all my hair during that time, lost eyebrows. I think as a male, you can lose hair and look pretty normal, but when you start losing eyebrows, people, know you're sick. So I was pretty self-conscious about that. I think more so for me, I didn't want people to feel pity on me or feel like I needed help or that there was something wrong with me. It wasn't more like a physical appearance. I was okay with not having hair. So I wore beanies during that time, which is like looking back, it was kind of silly of me wearing beanies when it was like 90 degrees in Georgia. They probably thought I was sick in the head more than anything for doing that. But thankfully, I had a great support system with my family and my friends and my girlfriend or wife now, and was able to get through that. Just super grateful for just all the support, and now being at the place that I'm in now, being in remission this long, it's special to get to tell this story after a decade later.
Well, you said a lot of things that made me think of other things to just talk about. And one of them is you were 22, ready to start life, working part-time, all those things that young men think about. And then you're faced with cancer. And I know Max felt that way too, my son. And I think a lot of young men have to feel that way when you hear that word, cancer, and you have to deal with it. But it sounds like as hard as it was, you got through it and, just did a lot, called on people. And you mentioned your faith. I think that's a big part of many people's their way to heal. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So for me, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ and believe that he died on the cross for my sins and that he's the only way to an eternal life, and that this life that we live on this earth is only temporary. So if I was called home during that time, I knew where I was going. I'd grown up in church. I won't say that I've always walked a straight and narrow path and been a faithful steward to him, and we're all sinners and we're all imperfect and we'll always screw up. I continue to screw up today and continue to make selfish decisions and selfish comments today, even as a believer. But I know that I'm forgiven of those things that I do every day. And because of that, it gives me peace in knowing that he has a plan for me, even if in a worldly stance, it seems like it was a bad outcome or it was a bad card that was being dealt. One thing that I will share is that in that time, not really thinking this way until probably halfway through it. But for me, it's an opportunity, even now, this far out, and I guess for the rest of my life, to be able to use it as part of my testimony. I've had a lot of opportunity with people that I had built relationships with even before I got diagnosed. And now they've gone through some type of cancer. They know people, they have friends. There's other men that I've met that have been through the same type of cancer. So I'm able to kind of use what I learned through that and kind of encourage them. I think more than anything, as human beings, we thrive community and thrive connection with other people. And it gives us peace to know that we're not the only person going through that. I think that's why life groups or Bible study groups are so helpful for individuals, and not even just for people that go to church, but if you've ever been married, or you've ever gone through a tough season of life, or you got children, sometimes you think that you're the only one experiencing what you're going through, and you're like, I don't understand. I'm on an island by myself. And then you start talking to people, and everybody's situation is very similar, and everybody at some point has been through something similar to you. And so I think it's really wise to surround yourself with people, and especially people that are good, positive believers that can help you get through that, and not necessarily pessimistic minded, because that's what you need. You need positive reinforcements, and you need encouragement, and you just need to have, just a foundation of faith. I don't care what it is you go through life, even if it's you're on the high and everything's going great in your life. If you live long enough, there's at some point there's going to be a valley after that high, and it's just part of life. I mean, this world it takes no prisoners. This is a tough world that we live in.
It is tough, and I think people often learn that, as you did with your cancer. You kind of mentioned, or you did mention the City of Hope, and it sounds like that was an excellent place to go. And I always like to talk about where some of the guests go, because other men that listen may not A, know about it, or B, be in a city or a location where they do have a good cancer treatment center. Do you want to talk a little bit about the city of just your treatment and how it went? And you did already, but
yeah, of course. Yeah. So when I got diagnosed at that time, there was a rule that was in place. I think that rule's been lifted since then, but there was only 20% of their patients were allowed to come from Georgia at this treatment location that I was at. The City of Hope has multiple locations. I think they maybe have 5 locations around the U.S. now. That could be off. It could be more or less than that, but basically have them in different cities and obviously the states around the country. At the time, and this is God and faith, and I believe complete faith in this. My mom, she has lived a successful career, worked for Delta for 26 years, decided to retire, go into consulting work. She did that for a while, and then she kind of got to the point where she wanted to be more present at home. As a mom, we were, at the point where I was in college and my sister was in high school. I got a younger sister, and so she just wanted to be present for, I guess, for those stages of life. Knew they only came once, and so she actually moved into a role where she was helping lead marketing for a local bike shop. And so in that, she met a lot of people through road biking, riding bicycles, and she got into it. Kind of became a new hobby for her and a passion. And so she met a few people, and luckily those people were in upper leadership roles for the City of Hope at the time, and became good friends with them. This was way before my diagnosis, way before anything happened. And so I truly believe that those relationships and the connections there helped me get in as quick as I did, because I know there's sometimes a long waiting list, or was in the past. Thankfully, I think that's changed now, so you can get in. So after I got an initial opinion from, I think it was Piedmont, a local provider for us, which they're a great doctor and hospital. We've had our daughter there and plan to have our next there as well. And so they just don't specialize in cancer. In the City of Hope, that's all they specialize in. They've been in practice for even longer than when I started getting treatment. I think that, I don't know when they first were founded, but I know that the man that founded it, his family member was impacted by it. And so he's super passionate about wanting to create a provider or some type of an doctor's office, that you could go to one location and you could get scans, blood work, treatment, food, all care in one place. It felt like when somebody goes through cancer, they had to go to 15 different providers, drive all the way around all over the place for these different appointments in the same day, same week. And it was just big burden for somebody who's already struggling with something like probably one of the worst things that they'll struggle with from a health standpoint in life. And so he was passionate about creating that, and that's what that was founded on, basically. And it is that, and it's an amazing place because not only do you have some of the top surgeons, which the surgeon that performed my surgery is like one of the top in the country that performs those type of surgeries, and so you have full confidence in that. But you also have like top of the line medicine as far as treatment goes, the treatment plans, they stay up to date in their research on, ensuring that they're providing the best treatment. They don't just do the same thing because it's always worked for patients. They modify that from an oncology standpoint. And then the people that work there, and that's, I think, one of the critical parts is like they always positive. I don't care who the person is or what their role is there. I walk through the halls and people were like, hey, how are you doing? And hope you have a great day. And they smile at you and there to help. And, I told you I work for Chick-fil-A, so I don't know if you've experienced that. I hope you have.
Oh, yeah, we have. We like it. Yeah.
So that kind of second mile, I'm here for you. I care about you. This isn't just a transaction. I felt like almost like I was at home, quote unquote, at work because of just how the people showed up. And then I felt that with the nurses. I felt that with the infusion team. They all were personable. They all showed care, asked me questions, stay connected with me. A lot of those nurses, they've left since then and gone other places, or maybe they've stayed at home and they've changed this kind of career paths. And so I still stay connected with a number of them. That's how personable they were with me and how I felt, loved and cared for during that time. So I think that's critical wherever you go. Plus, like when I was getting treatment, a lot of places when you do infusion, you're in like a big room with a bunch of people and everybody's just in a chair. And it's okay. And I know there's some value in that community, but if you like privacy and you just kind of want your own space, which when you get treatment, chemo treatment usually sucks the energy out of you. You just want to kind of sleep and you don't want there to be bright lights in an uncomfortable room. Well, they have like individual rooms and they have TVs and they bring you a warm blanket. So just kind of like that, the difference between flying like first class versus like flying economy, right? If you've ever got to experience that. And so it just helps like mentally. I think you get through that. It makes you feel like you're not just going through waterboarding at the time for me. Like it was special.
Yep. It sounds really good. And I think there's one now in Chicago. I'm trying to remember where it is, but
that's right.
I've talked to other people who have experienced care there and very highly respected. And so I'm glad that you had that opportunity and could let people know who might listen to this too.
I think you got to get a second opinion no matter what it is.
Yes, I agree. Yep. Very important with cancer a lot of times. So tell me about, and you mentioned this earlier, but all the things about losing your hair and wearing the beanie. And what do you think was your biggest challenge through all of that treatment time?
So thankfully, I didn't have a lot of problems with getting sick, like throwing up and nausea.
Oh, okay.
I hate when I get sick and throw up. I mean, I'm just like a little baby when I get sick. They joke about man colds and men, and they over exaggerate how they feel. Well, I'm like that when I get nauseous and throw up. I cannot stand it. So I was very fortunate. I didn't get sick and throw up during that time. But I think the biggest challenge for me was from a psychological standpoint. I was told that it was due to stress. And it probably was part of that. There's obviously a lot of stress that took place during that time in my life. I'm a person that I'm very busy. I'm very type A. I'm very driven in life. It's something that can be a very positive thing, but also be a detriment to, depending on what's going on in the season of life. And so during that time, I had never really been put in a place to where I had to put it in a different gear and slow down, be in a different speed, right? So I wasn't really allowed to drive. I couldn't really physically drive, to be honest with you. I couldn't be out on my own. I couldn't live at my house anymore. I had to move back in with my mom at the time. I had to have care and people drive me. And so I didn't like that at all. Like I wanted to go and do things. I love a lot of things outdoors. I love to hunt and fish and play golf and sports. And so I'd con friends into picking me up and we'd go sit in the woods. And I remember I killed a deer and I couldn't even drag the deer out of the woods, and I had to get a buddy to help me drag because I was so gassed from an air standpoint. And it was weird because I don't know if it was that, but also too, maybe the chemos and the drugs that I was taking, the mixture of that during that time. But I would get upset, I'd be crying, and then I'd be laughing, then I'd be happy. Like it'd be like bang, bang, and I'm not a very emotional person. And so to experience those different emotions like back to back real quick, I mean, in a matter of seconds,
Yeah.
it was very off for me. It just did not, and it just things triggered those emotions. And thankfully, I had people that I met during this time. There was a gentleman, he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. He's basically told by his first doctor's office that they were just going to make him comfortable. He was in his 70s. You're not going to survive this. Thankfully, he went to the City of Hope and got a second opinion, and he survived. And he was at that point was in remission. It was 100%
Wow.
cancer. And so he told me, I was telling him about that during that time, he would actually volunteer his time and go and sit with people that were going through treatment. And I told him about what was going on. And I said, I'm getting the response from the doctors that it's just stress. It's not from the chemo. We got to keep doing this chemo treatment. We can't change the drug or whatever. And he told me, he said, I'll be honest with you, I don't know what's true, but I experienced some of the same things, and I'm a pretty level-headed person. He said that one night I was at home and I was looking in my closet and I couldn't find a pair of cowboy boots I wanted to wear the next day that I liked. And he said, I've never done something like this, but a week later, my wife comes inside and she said, why is there 12 boxes of cowboy boots outside? He said, I don't know why, but I ordered the 12 different kinds of boots. I couldn't pick which one I wanted. And he just the crazy stories like that. And he said, I felt like that was probably something to do from a psychological standpoint. So that to me was the biggest struggle, just the emotional swing and the psychological stance, like thinking you're going crazy. I had weird episodes where I was schizophrenic and I felt like people were after me. It was just strange things that I've never experienced before. So hopefully somebody listens to this and they're maybe going through treatment and they've experienced that. Just know that it'll soon will pass and you'll go back to a steady mental state. It's not a long-term impact on you.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I think that's important to hear. And wow, it's hard, those mood swings and
They are.
just different everything about what you do. The 12 pairs of cowboy boots, that's really, that's, I like to shop, but I'm not, you have to pay attention, I guess, right?
That's
So,
right. Yeah.
you've already told me a little bit, but you talked about how your perspective on life has changed. It's been 10 years now since that you're cancer free and so forth. So why come out now and talk about it? Or maybe you've already been talking about it, but
I honestly, so early on after I was in remission, that was my goal, was to share my story. I was more open about it and wanted to share. I felt like I'd realized that there's a reason I went through this. And if I was silent about it, then I wasn't fulfilling that reason that God had intended of it to be. So I had opportunities during that time. I went to a few youth groups at churches and shared my story. And I got to do a devotion. We do a Monday morning devotion at the office every week. And so somebody comes and speaks and gives a devotion. So I got to be able to share that devotion, share my story, thank everybody, how they came around me during that time, the complete strangers at work, which was special. And so it's weird because I guess timing, everything from a timing perspective, the whole thing with the Fox 5 News and how you found out about my story. I got basically an email because April was Testicular Cancer Awareness Month from a person who was a marketing company who works through the City of Hope and picked up my story through them. And so they did an interview with me through a Teams meeting. And then I guess that what they do is they pitch those to local news companies. And so basically at that point, it got picked up and I was not expecting that. And it's funny because everything in life always happens at once. So, like I shared, this already, but my wife's expecting. So we've gone through this whole stint of her being sick. We've got a 6-year-old and so busy in life in general. And then we decided to move because we needed more space with her expecting in October. And so we had like half our house packed up and weren't expecting anything. And I assumed if this thing ended up working out to where I was going to do an interview with somebody, it was going to be like a station somewhere, and they, of course, are texting me like, can you do it tomorrow at your house? And I'm thinking to myself, that's the last place I want to do an interview on the news. So it's funny because now it's just how things worked out. It's, you look back and it's not a big deal, but it just all kind of happened at once. And then the City of Hope reached out to me at the same time to do something separate for April. And I'm super grateful for that. But really, ultimately, like, my perspective during that time changed around, just appreciating really the little things in life and not getting too worked up about, the things that you think they matter in the moment, but they don't. Now, I will tell you, I still struggle with that today. I have that, I told you, type A personality. I get very locked in on what it is that I'm trying to pursue, whether that's in my career or personal endeavors or hobbies or things at home. And so I get locked in and I become this like tunnel focused person to where I'm like, let's get it done no matter what. And so for me too, I'm very competitive. I have high expectations for myself and I'm competitive in general. And so I'm like, come heck or high water, we're going to get this done. But that going through that reminds me, and I'm reminded thankfully by many people around me, family, my parents, my sister, my wife reminds me a lot of like, it's not a big deal. Let's live in the moment. But during that time, I really got to see that just getting in a car and driving down the road with the windows down and it being a pretty day outside. I was super grateful for that. And I'd never been so fast paced in the way that I live my life. I've never felt that way before. And so I got to learn that during that time. And I think maybe some people get to experience that later in life when you get older. You look back, and I know I hear a lot of people saying, like, don't wish these tough years of having young kids away. They're going to be grown, they're going to be off to college, or don't wish this part of your young life away where you're just real busy. At some point, you may not be physically able to do these things. And you kind of shrug that stuff off. But having lived that early in life, I do see that. I do recognize that. Not that I'm always honoring that in the way that I think or make decisions, but I am reminded of that and reminded how that felt. And I'm thankful for that because of that. And it's true, though. I mean, life is short, and some of the things in our life that we get worked up about in the moment are really not a big deal in the big picture of things. And, we get stressed and we worry and we prepare, and then it happens. And you're like, well, that wasn't that bad. And so I think those things are important generally.
I'm with you on trying to live in the moment, or
Yeah.
I'm not good at it. I've been trying to read more about mindfulness, and things aren't a big deal. Well, why didn't he empty the dishwasher? Okay, fine. I'll empty the dish. I mean, you know what I mean?
That's
Stupid
right.
things that you can really just go be really upset about that you don't need
Yeah.
to. And
Yeah.
I also agree with you. We have 3 dogs, and I walk one of them, and just walking around the neighborhood, and it's like, oh, I didn't notice that. You know what I mean? It's beautiful. It's
Right.
nature. It's whatever's there. So
Yeah.
you make really good points about just how to live.
Do what I say, not what I do sometimes. It's kind of my message there. But I think it's important that you recognize it more than anything. And like I said earlier, we're all sinners. We're always going to screw up. We're always going to mess up. Personality traits have a big impact in which natural route we take versus the other route. You got to be intentional to do things or implement things that you don't naturally want to do with your personality. And I think life teaches us ways to be more intentional with those things that we know we need to do to balance out how we approach life.
I agree. I know you said you're expecting your second child in
Yeah.
October, and we talk about fertility on the podcast too. Is there anything that you can share about? Did you struggle with that, if I can
We,
ask, or?
yeah, of course. Yeah, that's a very good question. And thankfully, praise God, we didn't struggle with that. I know many people do, and having now had Emma and have a healthy child and my wife being pregnant again, I'm super grateful that initially when we had Emma, we did not struggle with that at
Okay.
all. That was a fear that we had. And if I'm being transparent, we were told there was a 40% chance because of the chemo that I went through, we would not be able to, or I would not be able to have kids naturally. So you have to bank sperm, you go through that whole process. And then me and my wife got married. I'm a few years younger than her. And so when it got time to where we started talking about kids, she was very ready to have kids. And I was very ready not to have kids. And so I pushed as far back as I could. And I was like, no, 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 let's keep enjoying life and keep enjoying the flexibility. And we're young. And she kept pushing and saying, we need to do it. We need to do it. And now hindsight, I wouldn't change how things turned out. I'm thankful that we were married for 4 years before we had Emma, and we got to experience life together, and we got to do special things that now take a lot of planning and working out on from a logistic standpoint to make happen. But we had Emma early on. We were high risk because of what I went through. And so we had to go through high risk appointments, but thankfully everything worked out with her. She went full term, and my wife was able to give birth to her, and there was no C-section or anything like that. I will share this because I think it's helpful for anybody to hear. We went through a miscarriage last year. We were not sure, and there's reasons, a big gap. We're not sure if we wanted to have a second child. We were at the point where when we had Emma, she was a child that didn't sleep a lot. My wife was working and she was teaching, so there's not a lot of flexibility in a teacher's schedule.
Right.
If anybody listens to this and either is married or knows a teacher or is a teacher. And so it was just tough. We're working hard. I was back in school getting my MBA, which don't recommend doing that when you have a newborn at home and you're both working. That's a recipe for burnout, but we did it. I'm proud of us for doing that. I couldn't have done it without her. And then ultimately, Emma, now she's 6, and my wife was able to change kind of her career path. So she got to stay at home for the past year and a half. She was just kind of at the point of where parents, unfortunately, and The administration and leadership is not the same as it used to be. And she got to the point where she didn't have the passion for it. And if you're going to be a teacher and get paid the way that teachers get paid, you better be passionate about it. And so when she started losing that, we both decided it was great for her to take a sabbatical, and she could always do something else in life. She don't have to be a teacher just because she has a degree in that. So after that, it took her probably about a year or so. And then she started talking about it. And of course, my personality, I'm like, whoa, that wasn't part of the plan. I'm a big planner. We decided we weren't going to have any more. And so I pushed back a little bit, and we ended up getting pregnant, and she had that miscarriage. So it was tough last year. It was another big learning opportunity for us in our marriage, and, having faith in God and getting through that together. And I do believe it's made us stronger in our relationship. And I'm thankful that we got to experience that. I'm not thankful that we had to go through that and she had to experience that, because it has been and was really tough, and always will be something that's part of that, just part of that, I guess, soreness you feel of tough seasons you go through in life. But now she's pregnant again, and everything looks great. We're expecting beginning of October, and we had not had to go through any kind of fertility issues or problems like that. We thought that could be the case after we had miscarriage. We didn't know if it was, we'd gotten to the point where I was no longer fertile, or that she's gotten older, or what. But we prayed about it. And I think the hardest part for us, and during that time, or at least for what I saw, was the hurt that she's felt. But then Emma being 6 and knowing, and us telling her last year, and then having to tell her that her baby sister went to heaven. So that was really hard. When they're young and they don't understand, they don't know, that's a benefit there. But now Emma, we got actually shared with her, wait a little bit to share. And so we shared with her this weekend, and her response was, God answered my prayers. I'm really excited. And she's being overly nice to Addie and to me. And Addie was like, how long do you think this will last? I was like, I don't know, hopefully a couple of days. We'll see, so. But it'll be special to get to experience that as a family, and get to see Emma and how she'll show up. I'm sure she'll be a great helper. She loves playing mom and playing with babies. So I'm sure when she wants to, she'll be a good helper, right?
Yeah, she will. And that's your story, time-wise, is similar to what happened with my kids, because my John Mark and Max are about 7 years apart, and I had a miscarriage before. And I think I'll just say, because you kind of hinted at it, I think miscarriages are often underplayed in terms of the emotional angst, or whatever the word is, about them for women. But it sounds like you have a great plan, and new baby coming soon. So that's wonderful.
We're excited. I think it's one thing too, probably cancer. It doesn't get talked about enough. And my wife has said that multiple times, and has met a number of people that she already had relationships with that she had no clue they ever had miscarriages, and some multiple times. And I think probably for miscarriages, it's almost embarrassing for the woman or the family. And so they don't talk about it. And I do feel like, just like in this case, testicular cancer is not something we all talk about. If you had lung cancer, that may feel like it's more appropriate to talk about than testicular cancer. And so I think it's one of those things where people need to talk about it, and people need to hear about it, because you'd be surprised that when you bring it up, how many people have been through it, or know somebody that's been through it, and can help you or help the person that's struggling with it, that don't want to talk about it.
Yep, you're right. So what's next for you in life, with another baby? But
another baby, yes. Yeah. I've got to relearn how to change a diaper, and relearn what it's like to, not get the consistent sleep at night. We're praying that may not be the case. You hear from people that one child is opposite of the other child personality wise. Well, Emma, I told you earlier, she doesn't sleep well. She still doesn't require a lot of sleep. She can go to bed at 9 o'clock forcefully, and then wake up at 5:36 a.m. and be ready to go, and run all day with no naps. And she's very type A, so I'm sure she gets that from me. And she's very, very persistent. She does not like no. And I've told a number of people that she's either going to be a CEO and very successful as a female, or she's going to run a prison gang, one of the two, and I hope the latter. So she's a special kid. She's very smart, very outgoing. She's very well rounded. When we found out we were having a little girl, I told you I have a lot of hobbies and love everything outside, and working on things and equipment, and we've got property that we've purchased with our home, and so cutting grass and tractors and all that good stuff. And I told myself, I was like, well, we're having a little girl. One thing I'm going to do right is I'm going to make sure she's exposed to as many things as possible as a little girl. So to kind of give you a high level of like Emma's personality, she could go this afternoon and go with my wife and sit for 2 hours in a nail salon chair and get her nails done and be completely content, and then come home and get oil all over her hands, helping me change oil in a tractor, and then go catch fish, and killed her first deer this year. And so very well-rounded little girl, loves to do it all, loves all things outdoors and animals and being sweaty and dressing up as a princess too. So it's as good as it could be having a little girl, and knowing that we're having another little girl. People have asked me like, "Were you disappointed at having a boy?" And I'm like, well, I'll be honest with you. My daughter is probably more tomboyish than a lot of my buddies' boys are that are boys that are her age. And I've got what God intended for me to have. And so it's special. We'll continue to get ready for the baby, and we got home projects that we're going to do a lot this summer. And then we'll probably go on maybe one trip. And then working for me, just my life is pretty busy from a work career standpoint. I know you experience that at Chick-fil-A when you go through the drive-through, and it's not much different in my world. And so just continue to try to show up and add value at work, and hopefully be able to have opportunities like this to share my story and testimony, and try to do good work for God in my life in whatever area it is, and try to continue to be intentional and showing up well as a spouse and as a father, and just being present is my goal right now this season.
So what's your favorite item on the Chick-fil-A menu?
It's got to be a number one sandwich. I'm a very simple person when it comes to food. I don't have to have real nice bougie food to be satisfied, or fancy recipes. So I'm good with a Chick-fil-A sandwich. I try to go the healthier route and get a grilled sandwich or get nuggets. But if I'm making emotional decisions about my food choice, and like I'm hungry and I just want to eat something good, I'll have a number one.
Okay.
All right. What about you? What do you prefer?
I like the chicken sandwich. I like it.
Yeah.
The grilled is good, but the fried is better. So
you can't be fried.
it's really good.
It's not as good for you, but
I know,
good.
So
it's a good soul food, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So the last question is, Matthew, what song, when you hear it, do you have to sing along?
I'm a big country artist fan, so I love anything to do with country music, and it can be older country music, or it could be some stuff up to date, current. There's a song. It's Go. What's the title of the song? I just forgot about it. Hold on a second. Go Rest High on the Mountain, and it's by Vince Gill. So I had to look it up earlier. I couldn't remember it. I'm not good with song names or artists. I struggled there, but it's a good song, and it's about at the end of the day, you've kind of lived your life, and it's time to go home to go see God, and it's okay. You've lived a good life, right? And so I think the message there is that no matter what it is that I'm doing in life, I want to make sure that I'm doing a good job. And like I said earlier, I continue to mess up. I mess up every day, and I know that'll never stop. But I want to be intentional as I can to live a life for God and live a life for other people. And I know that I've experienced, I know we all probably experience this, that when you do more for others and you try to be intentional about giving yourself to either your spouse or your kids and showing up for them, that you feel more fulfilled in life. And so I'm hoping that when I do breathe my last breath, that there's people that have been around me that can say that. And I'm hopeful that God's smiling and happy to welcome me home after I've done his work on this earth. So it hadn't been just for me.
Yeah. That sounds wonderful. Yeah, that's great. This song, from what you're telling me, it matches with what you're trying to do in your life. So that's wonderful. So I really appreciate all your time and
thank
willingness
you, Joy,
to share your story with us. And
thank you for doing this. It's very inspiring what you're doing, and I'm sorry about your loss, and it's heartbreaking to hear that. But it's amazing that you dedicate time and energy to be able to gather people's stories and try to make a difference in somebody else's life that's going through this. Or I know the support system, I know that's what you were. There's one thing that I'll share, one more thing for me. I know that it's not just the person that's going through this. And it sometimes, and I know as a mother, and saw my mom, how hard it was on her. It is very, very hard to see a child or your child go through that. Now as a father, I can only imagine how that feels. And so just to applaud you for having the strength to show up and record these and know that you're doing it for somebody else and try to make an impact for them. It's very inspiring.
Well, thank you. That's very gracious of you to say that. And I really appreciate it. And that's our goal with this, is to raise awareness so that other men don't have to go through what you've gone through or Max went through. So thank you.
It means a lot.
All right. Wish you the best with your
Thank
upcoming
you.
new family member. And maybe I will call you and have you come back in a year and tell us what
I,
you're doing. I'd like to
I
do
love
that.
that. I
Okay,
would love
good.
that.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you for watching this episode of Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to our program on your favorite podcast directory. You can also visit the Max Mallory Foundation at www.maxmalloryfoundation.com/podcast to listen to previous podcast episodes or donate to the foundation. Join us again next time for another episode of Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer.